As someone that is known for helping others create their most deeply fulfilling life, I'll show you how to do the same. I'm Kim Shambaugh, a certified holistic nutritionist, intuitive, and Reiki practitioner. Welcome to the Never Settle Life podcast. Hello, my friend. Welcome back to today's episode. We're going to be talking all about post-traumatic growth, what it means, and how to apply it when you have gone through a series of unfortunate events, either currently or you're carrying some things that need to be processed. So go ahead, find yourself a comfy spot, and we're gonna dive right in. So along with today's show, I'm going to link a free session to help you actually move through some of this work that we're gonna be talking about today, as well as practice some of the tools that I'm gonna mention to help move you along. Post-traumatic growth occurs after you've experienced some sort of traumatic event, and you're able to take everything that has occurred and alchemize it into a positive psychological outcome. Now, this is not a linear journey. This is not some positive, fluff you up thinking. Okay, we're going to be getting into real somatic tools and mindset practices to help you actively move through, get present, and process some of the heavy stuff that you might be hanging on to. So even if you're not currently experiencing something like this, inevitably in life, with the human experience, we are going to go through something, whether it's heartbreak, death, loss of a job, financial issues, you name it. The human experience does not come without pain. And in order to not only keep our head above water, but rise above our circumstances and be able to heal and take what we've learned and apply it to not only daily life, but transform it into something beneficial that will help our lives in the future, we have to be able to cultivate resilience. Now, resilience is not something that we are innately born with, but it's something that you can train. So just like working out in the gym, just like using your muscles, you can train resilience into your existence. So you can take these tools today and use them for things like everyday stress. You don't have to be going through some crisis in order to apply what we're going to be talking about today. So I want you to, if you are going through something, meet yourself with such gentleness, curiosity, and most of all, an open mindset to learn something new. We cannot be responsible for the things that have happened to us, but we are responsible for our healing. I really started to learn more about post-traumatic growth this past year after experiencing probably the most soul-shaking year of my life thus far. It really did push me to the edges of human existence, and there were some days that even though I do this professionally, I do self-regulation, I do these tools and techniques, there were extremely hard days. But I will say these tools inevitably kept my head above water and eventually brought me out on the other side. And it's taken me a very long time to make this episode, 6 months to be exact, but I knew I needed to be in a very specific mindset to bring these solutions to you. I want to start by saying whatever it is you're going through or inevitably will go through is going to bring about negative emotions. Now, I am a very positive person. I encourage positivity. I encourage growth mindsets. At the same time, it is so okay for you to be human. Growing through times of difficulty will be messy. It's not going to be pretty. And you will at some point encounter some sort of negative state. This is not a bad thing. It's simply part of the human experience. And I think if we were to give ourselves permission to feel bad, that it would be a little helpful. At the same time, we cannot live in that negativity. So let's start off by talking about self-regulation. So when we're talking about our nervous system and the part of our brain that's our amygdala, this is the most archaic parts of ourselves that were meant to keep us alive and keep us safe back during times when we were running from saber-toothed tigers and needing to find food and interacting with other people. It was a way to keep us safe. And on some level, these natural responses of fight or flight, freeze or fawn, are good for us. So we have two ends of the spectrum, and in the middle is self-regulation, or what's known as our window of tolerance. Now, if you have undergone trauma, if you're especially sensitive, that window of tolerance might be very narrow. And this can have to do with emotions, this can have to do with mindsets, this can even have to do with your energetic makeup in terms of what you can tolerate stress-wise. So this is good stress and bad stress. The point is not to live stress-free, but to be able to stretch the edges of our comfort zone without falling off of the edges into fight or flight chronic states or freeze or fawn chronic states, which end up becoming anxiety and depression. So you can see what I'm saying here, overactive versus underactive. And when we're hanging out in those areas for too long, how can we come back to center? So this is the name of the game. And this is going to require you to really get to know yourself on a deep level and get really honest with yourself. So let's start by talking about the shadow. Ultimately, we have to approach this process with curiosity. If you are trying to better yourself in life in any sort of way, you're going to have to become a curious person. You're going to have to start to ask yourself critical questions. You're going to have to start creating critical thinking naturally. So what does this mean? Basically, it's walking around and ultimately holding up a mirror to yourself as you're interacting with the world around you. So when you have conflict, take a second, reflect. How did that go? How could you have come off maybe a little differently? And really it comes back down to extreme ownership. Now, if this is really easy to notice when you're not in that place of extreme ownership, or if you have a hard time like owning the things that maybe you could be taking more responsibility for, if we're stuck in a victim mentality. And that's just the thing. We cannot help the things that have happened to us, but it's our responsibility to start to work through them and heal those areas. It's not our fault what happened to us, but it's our responsibility to work through these things so that we can begin to heal. So we start by zooming out. We start by getting to know the inner voice inside of our head and just being able to observe. So that brings us to our first self-regulation technique, which is meditation. So meditation, mindfulness practices will train your brain and train your brain waves and bring you from a chronic state of dysregulation or a high beta brainwave state and be able to drop you and train your brain to drop into an alpha state. It's almost that hypnotic feeling that you get when you've been driving a long time and you kind of lose track of time. So if we can naturally train ourselves through mindfulness and observation, releasing, detaching, we can be able to do that during conversations. We can start to self-regulate and notice when we're getting heated or when we're getting upset and start to become responsive instead of reactive. And I'm sure you can see how this is beneficial for building relationships and growing yourself as a human in general. So in taking extreme ownership and starting to look at our shadows and getting really honest with the things that are no longer working for us will require us to be pretty emotionally mature. So maybe we start here. Maybe we start with getting to know the self without judgment. We start to notice the patterns that are no longer working and being really gentle about the things that we find. I highly recommend to look into internal family systems to get to know the different parts of yourself and the ways that these different parts of the psyche try to keep you safe. And the truth is, if we're having a hard time and if we stay stuck in victim mentality, you will always be defensive. So if you're still defensive, and I'm talking about whether it's circumstances that are out of your control, relationships, things that are happening in your life, when you ultimately sit in that victim mentality, you will feel defensive, and that will project to everybody else in the world around you, ultimately impacting your relationships and your trajectory in life. You'll find it hard to play well with others, to connect with others, and be interdependent instead of codependent, which is like, I have to have somebody to save me. I mean, we're sold this story from a very young age that we need a savior. We need a prince to come and save us and to celebrate our existence, or hyper independent because we don't need no man and we don't need anybody and we can all do it ourselves, right? So in order to have a well-functioning world, society, and self, we have to play well with others. One thing I want to say with this process is to be very, patient with yourself. You need space, you need time, and likely you need to clear your schedule as much as you can to process really big, really heavy life events. Alongside of this, start to notice, what are your specific things that you like to check out with? Whether it's scrolling, shopping, sex, food, whatever the thing is, you don't have to be a purist by any means, but I want you to simply pause without judgment and just notice the emotions and feelings inside of your body as this is happening. Start to ask the questions. What was I just thinking? What was I just feeling 30 minutes ago, 2 hours ago, earlier today? What state of mind am I in? Or what is it that I want to feel more of? This is going to give you huge insight to where healing needs to take place. So be very gentle with the process and don't make it a race. Really take your time with starting to learn yourself and learn your needs throughout your healing journey. So as you're starting to learn to dance with the shadow, and it's just this constant thing of taking layer by layer of yourself and starting to reveal those ugly parts of ourselves that we try to hide, that we would rather people not see, and meeting them with grace, you're going to get worn down. That's a natural part of this whole process. And this is where you have to have immense grace and patience with yourself. So you're going to go through process of a victim mentality and asking, why me? Why is this happening? Because ultimately, bad things happen, right? Bad things happen to good people. But the truth of the matter is, it's up to you how you receive this information and ultimately what you make it mean. So you could take all this information in and tell yourself the story of the world is a terrible place, it's an evil place, only bad things happen. And the truth of the matter is, the reticular activating system in the brain, along with your amygdala that's trying to keep you safe, are going to seek out negative things. Because if we notice more dangerous things, we would stay home, do nothing, talk to no one, and sit and watch Netflix all day. So there has to be some sort of push for growth and risk, right? So we have to challenge your neural pathways. Basically, think of these as the paths in which a skier goes down a mountain, and we've thought these negative thoughts our whole life, whether we heard them around us day after day growing up, and just different mindsets that we've adopted over time and created our own worldview. The thing is, though, the brain is pliable. We can start to change our beliefs. If you change your beliefs, you will change your life. And a belief is a thought that you just keep thinking over and over. So we have to change your thoughts. And it's up to you. If you want to sit in the victim mentality of this is just reality and this is how it is, versus I'm going to choose to see the positive in situations. I'm going to see how growth can take place through this. And whether that be injustice or something that's happened personally, you can take something from that and be able to alchemize it into change, which ultimately leads to something better. So this is a process of constantly catching yourself and choosing again without judgment. So you can see too how this ultimately results in navigating self-regulation, because the truth of it is, we don't feel the same every single day. Our feelings are different. If you have a specific hormonal makeup, that's going to change constantly. Like, we are ever-changing beings, and there has to be some level of acceptance of impermanence, because when we really break it down, life is purely impermanent. It's always changing. We will get older, people will change, relationships change, jobs change, everything is always changing. And it's okay to grieve the parts of the things that fall away. We don't necessarily have to just move on and pretend like everything's fine per se, but processing that grief while looking forward and building something even greater. It requires a level of detachment, because if we constantly get hung up in people's stories, how they should act, how the world should be, this shouldn't have happened, we're focusing far too much on things that we ultimately can't control. At the end of the day, All that you can control are your thoughts and your actions. So this becomes a process of unbecoming, and then sitting in the in-between is one of the hardest things, especially if you're somebody that likes to always be moving forward. So how can you find contentment with your present moment? This starts with gratitude. So finding the smallest thing that is good in the moment, anything at all, and keeping a running list of the things that are good. Eventually, your brain, the reticular activating system that is searching out for confirmation bias, will start to look for good things. This ultimately will start to change your beliefs, change your mind, and change your life. At the end of the day, we have the option to stay stuck in negative cycles. If we were to talk about the frequency of emotion just for a moment, the lowest vibration emotions are guilt and shame. At the very top of this spectrum is bliss, at the very top. Now, we can't get from guilt and shame in one fell swoop, especially if we've programmed all these things in our mind for a very long time. So maybe we start with anger, and then we move to apathy, and then we move to contempt, and then we're kind of indifferent. So you can see how eventually you make your way up to happiness, to joy, and it just grows from there. And again, every day is going to be different, so you just have to meet yourself where you're at. So as we are unbecoming and then becoming, eventually, if we keep this practice going and we keep staying present and we keep getting curious, eventually you will come to the conclusion that at the end of the day, you are whole just as you are. You have everything that you need inside of you for your fulfillment and for your happiness. And it's really hard when our entire society is telling us that we are inadequate and we need more in order to feel fulfilled. It comes back to our attachment styles and most of all, what we make things mean. So I want you to think of a negative situation, and what I mean by this is choose something mild. So maybe you had a disagreement with somebody and you took it kind of personally. You can ask yourself the question, what was I making that mean about myself? And if you really start to unpack it, you will start to notice that you probably had a prior wound and this thing triggered a reaction of familiarity inside of your body. So maybe you felt abandoned, maybe you felt used, like whatever that trauma or thing is for you. So we have to notice the stories that we're telling ourselves and constantly asking the question, is that true? Or is that just a story that I'm telling myself can be super helpful? So as we start to develop a growth-oriented identity, we can start to practice more with regulating our nervous system. So we do this through breath work. You can do meditation, journaling, self-reflection, EFT tapping, therapy, work with a trusted mentor, anything that's going to help you with personal development that has you own the things that you've been through, taking personal responsibility while also expanding your worldview. Ultimately, we're looking to build those positive neural pathways, right? And a huge factor with all of this is having proper social support. So I want to remind you, if you are in a situation that is not safe, that is not supportive, if you're not around people that make your soul feel alive, and you at least have one or two of those people in your life, you are not a tree. You can get up and move. And I know that that's so much easier said than done because certain relationships are very hard to let go of. Or I would say even just create space from. But at the end of the day, it's on you to make a change. And it truly is, even though it's hard, just a choice. So having social support is an absolute non-negotiable. I know for a fact if I didn't have a loving, supportive husband, if I didn't have amazing friends that held space for me, I don't know where I would be at this point in time, given everything that happened with me this past year. Where people typically lose themselves within the healing process or the lack of healing altogether is because they don't feel a sense of control. They feel like the uncertainty is insurmountable compared to the solution. And you know what? In so many circumstances, it's understandable to feel that way. But at the same time, you have to understand that as long as you are still alive, there is great possibility with changing your life. and changing how you're feeling and changing your experiences and changing the way that you feel. It's not easy. It will not happen overnight, but you can do it. So you have to be open to gaining some sort of sense of control, at least to have the desire. And being able to practice simple self-regulation techniques like EFT tapping, breath work, and that can be gentle breath work to help calm the nervous system down, or it can be activating breath work to bring the nervous system back up and amplify. So just depending on where you're at will depend on what you need. If you can change your state, you can change your beliefs, you can change the way you feel, and it will change your life. There is a Taoist quote that says, "Don't just do something, stand there." So I don't want to make this about just doing your practices and making sure you're pushing through so that way you can get to the other side and heal. I cannot explain to you how much time it takes for the healing process to take place, especially if you have been experiencing the things that you're experiencing right now for your entire life. You have to take it very slowly, give yourself so much grace and so much space step by step. So how can you bear witness to stillness? Because it's in that stillness and simply being with yourself, especially in those moments where you want to disassociate. If you just get present with yourself, you can get curious and ask, what is this teaching me like right now? How can I let go and release a little more? How can I allow? And this brings us into surrender, which is not to say you should give up. The way I like to describe it is being on a lazy river and letting the process take you where it needs to go. And then you'll get some inspired action and take aligned action from there. This is about removing the veils of everything that you've known to be true and starting to have a whole new way of being. And it takes a lot of practice. I want to add to this too, if you're experiencing soul forging times and you're an intuitive person, and by that I mean you're someone that can feel into the future of what's going on in your life. And you typically can get a feeling for what's probably going to come next, whether it's with your job, with relationships, you just kind of know. If you're in this moment of truly not being able to feel into the future, and you're in this process of unbecoming, and you don't know what's next, and you're in that state of surrender, even though that feeling of uncertainty can feel overwhelming, first things first, it's okay to hold both. You can practice being in this state of surrender while also possibly feeling a little anxious for the uncertainty of what's to come. And then it's constantly releasing and starting to trust. So this is where it's really important to have a relationship with God, the universe, your higher self, and remind yourself that you are taken care of. And you have to have a level of trust. But when you are having a hard time feeling into the future and you're in that what I call waiting room energy, you're in the unbecoming and you're starting into the becoming, or you're waiting for the becoming to start to happen, please understand that you are going through a level of initiation. You're about to level up your life, and sometimes there needs to be this space of clearing that takes place and equips you with everything you need for this next level of yourself. And a lot of times you'll look back, and I'm sure you can even think of times past of, you've been through something very specific, and because of that really hard time, it fully equipped you for something that you needed in the future. The biggest lesson that I learned in 2024 with this whole process, and I've heard this quote before, but to actually experience it was absolutely expansive in a way that I'm having a hard time finding words for. So it's always darkest before the dawn. And you're gonna get to that moment where you either quit and you give up, whatever that means for you, or you see it through and then you get to the other side and it's better than you could have ever imagined. I have yet to talk to anybody that has been on this journey and not have this happen. So please understand, if you're in that state of it's the darkest before the dawn, you listening to this right now is no mistake. You are meant to hear this. So let this be your sign. it's not long. Keep hanging on and keep going. You are so much more resilient and stronger than you could ever imagine. And I'm telling you right now, you have everything you need inside of you to have everything you've ever wanted in your life. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have it all at the same time, but maybe you have it all in different sort of seasons throughout your life. With these sort of soul-shaking experiences, it is going to create a very embodied, wise, and light, expansive version of you. So please understand that from a higher perspective on a spiritual level, that's what's happening here. I love the quote that says, "We break muscle down to build it back stronger. Why would the soul be any different?" Moving through deep trauma is absolutely an initiation. If you're here with me, keep going. You've got this. I'm sending you so much love, and we'll see you soon. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Never Settle Life podcast. I would love to have your rating and review, so let me know how you liked it. If you liked this episode, please share it with a friend and someone that would really enjoy it as well. Let me know what you'd like to hear more of, and send me a comment in my latest Instagram post at Never Settle Life on Instagram. Until next time, I'm Kim Shambaugh. I'll talk to you soon.
Being afraid of your own magnificence. And this is just not the time. This is not the time